Hi, it's August 27th. Welcome back to the kitchen. Today we're going to can some beets. Pretty good little pile of beet tops. If you remember the other canning videos, the blanching takes about 15 minutes boiling. Then we strain them, let them cool off, then we peel them. This is our last batch of blanching for today. When you're working with the pressure canner, you need to follow the instructions that come with the canner. This canner itself says that we need to have 3 quarts of water. I've already put 2 quarts in, so I'll put a 3rd quart in. 3 quarts is all it takes for the pressure canner to do its job. The difference between a hot water bath and a pressure cooker. A hot water bath and your jars need to be at least 1 inch to 2 inches below the surface of the boiling water. You use that for very high acid foods, or you add vinegar. Pressure canning brings the temperature up high enough to kill anything that might make you sick. Now the key parts would be the pressure dial gauge, which shows you how many pounds of pressure you're at. Next is your pressure regulator, which will be placed on your vent pipe. You have your air vent and your cover lock. When this gets a lot of pressure, this will raise up and it will prevent you from actually opening this before the pressure's off. You do not want to open this under pressure. You will get burned. You can hurt yourself very badly. This will prevent that from happening. There is an overpressure plug to make sure that we don't get too much pressure. You have a rubber gasket that needs to be cleaned and set in there. Now the air vent and the cover lock, when it comes up, it will slide against here and it will prevent you from actually unlocking the lid itself. Down inside you have a jar rack, which is necessary. You do not want your jars sitting directly on the metal that's sitting on the stove or the flame. Manufacturer recommendation for this pressure canner is 3 quarts of water. We're going to go ahead and put this on the back burner and preheat it. That way it's a little faster to build the steam up. And it's warm when we put the jars in. The recipe we're using today is very simple. Today we're using the oven to preheat these jars. The recipe calls for packing them, adding boiling water, 1 teaspoon of salt per quart, 1/2 teaspoon of salt for pints. Wipe the rim, add the lid and the rings, and place in the pressure canner. So all you do is you take your jars out of the oven, use your funnel so you don't make such a mess, and then start putting the beets down inside. We're going to want to have a 1/2 inch of head space. A little trick, kind of tap it down on your hand just a little bit. Go ahead and put a few more in. We'll go ahead and fill these up and then we'll put our boiling water in. We've got our water boiling, we've got our canner preheating. We've finished packing the beets in the jars. The canner holds 7 quarts and we only had 6. So let's do one of beans. Process time is basically the same. You're still going to want a 1/2 inch of head space. So we're going to still do our little trick. Tap it just a little bit, help them settle. Then you can just fill in the last few. And then we just put 1 teaspoon in each jar. And we'll add our boiling water. And then you just fill it with boiling water. Let it kind of work down in there. We're going to take the spatula and get the air bubbles out. A 1 inch of head space right up to the rim. Take a spatula, something, get down in there. Water has settled a little bit, so you want to add a little more. You still want to have about 1 inch of head space. But when you take the bubbles out, it will settle some. Now make sure you wipe the rim. Put your lid on and your ring. You just want it finger tight. Now this is hot. We want to move that straight into the canner. This is hot. You only want that finger tight. We'll move that over to the canner. We'll show you the canner here in a second. The same thing with the beans. Really get down in there, get that air out of there. That water didn't settle too much. I think we're okay there. So wipe off the rim. Just finger tighten. That is hot. Careful of that jar. Now that the water's starting to boil, let's go ahead and put the lid on. Now there's an arrow. You just line up the arrows. They'll sit right on there. Slide it until it locks. Now when this pops up, it's going to prevent it from unlocking. Because now we have to let it boil, bleed all the air out. We'll get a nice consistent steam on that. So now we wait. Once you have a moderate flow of steam coming out, you let it wait 10 minutes, bleed all the air out, and then you put on the regulator. At this point, the lock is up, and there's no way we're going to be able to open it up. It's got some pressure going, but it's not really building anything yet. It won't until we put the regulator on. All right, it's been 10 minutes. We're going to put the regulator on and let the pressure come up. Once it hits 12 pounds, then we'll start the timer for 35 minutes. You do not want to rush the pressure up, and you do not want to rush the pressure down. When we're done, you want it to cool down on its own. You're not going to be able to open the lid until all the pressure is bled off. During the 35 minutes at top pressure, you do not want it to drop under pressure. Then you're going to need to let it cool off and start all over again. The whole point of this is to kill off any microorganisms that could make you ill. So you just watch the pressure come up slowly. We'll be back when it gets to 12. This is a very important element of this. Your altitude will affect the amount of pressure and the amount of time you're going to need. I'm going to go ahead and turn the heat down just a little more. We'll let it go up one more pound, and then we'll start our timer. Then we're going to need to adjust our heat to make sure we stay between 11 and 12 pounds. We don't want to go much over 13 pounds. Alright, I'm going to start the timer. I'm going to go ahead and reduce the heat down quite a little bit. I don't want it to go any higher. For the next 30 minutes, I'll just have to keep an eye on it. Now the process is take the heat off, slide it over, let it cool down until the lock disengages. Do not remove the regulator at this point. It's going to blast some serious steam out. So you just let it cool off. It's going to take as long as it takes. I'll bring you back when we open it up. Well, it's been about an hour. The pressure's down to 0. The lock has dropped. So let's pull off the regulator just to make sure. That comes off, no problem. Nothing there. Opens up. And that's still a little warm. Be careful. A little calcium staining on the outside of the jars. You gotta love our hard water. We already got one popped. So as these cool down, the vacuum's created. Just a little hard water staining on the outside of the jars. Those will continue to bubble for quite a little while. Looks like we had one of the jars, probably should have been a little tighter. One of the jars did boil off some of its liquid. Sound like we got another pop. The beauty is, if you have one that boils off a little bit of liquid, that's the one we're going to put in the refrigerator and eat first. You do want to check with your local extension agent for your proper pressures for whichever vegetable you intend to can. Just be on the safe side. If you found any of this helpful, please hit the subscribe button and share it with your friends. Come on, let's plant.
Let's go plant garden.